So I'm here with Lemn Sissay, British poet of Ethiopian and Eritrean extraction. Welcome, Lem.
Hi.
We've been having lovely conversations actually about poetry and tell me a little bit about how you became a poet.
How I became a poet.
How did you get involved in writing poetry?
Well, I've always written. I've always written poetry, and I always knew that's what I wanted to do, even though I didn't know what a poet does, or didn't know what a poet is. I've always written since I was young, since as long as I can remember, and I've been a poet by profession all of my adult life, except for the first 6 months of being 18 and a half.
Right.
So I don't know any other way of being.
So what is it then about poetry that's so taken you over?
Truthfully?
Captured you?
Really?
Truthfully.
When I write poetry, time goes quicker. It's really weird. But when I write, I can write and look at the clock and it's one thing, and then I write and I look at the clock and it's another thing, and it's like 2 hours pass in what feels like a minute. Like something magical happens when I write that is deeply personal and deeply spiritual, and I can't explain it except to say, actually I can explain it. I can explain it. Poetry is who I really am, and I don't know what I'm going to write before I write it. Yeah. And poetry sort of forms a bridge between me and the world. You know, if nobody ever read it, I wouldn't still need that bridge, you know.
You would still need that bridge?
Yeah, of course.
So if you wrote a bunch of poems and no one read anything, how would that bridge work?
I think that's it. I think, you know, there's a writer called John Burnside who said metaphor is as close to the environment that any human being can ever get. I just think it's a beautiful thing. In other words, through the kind of prism of poetry, the world translates into both a physical and spiritual place in the same word, in the same sentence, in the same verse, in the same stanza. And that's truth. That's the truth for me. You know, we're constantly asked to split ourselves and split the world into manageable ideas which are not who we are. Right and wrong, black and white, evil and good, as if there's only two choices, you know, buy or don't buy, poor or rich. Rich is finance, poor is non-finance. These are untruths that we are asked to buy into, and poets don't buy into those things. They seek a truer connection, which is why on Tahrir Square and in what's called the Arab Spring, at the heart of revolution, you find poets who are translating the news, because people need to know that practically they don't have certain things. They don't have a house to live in, or they're being treated badly. Practically, physically, these things they may not have, but emotionally the story is much more profound, and poets put those two things together and form a language which is, I think, is the true language of people. Does that make sense, or
am I being... It does make sense. No, it does. So when you, for the Olympics this year,
yeah,
was that part of what you wanted to do in the aim of with the aim of creating a poem for the Olympics.
The Olympics.
How did that all come about?
Well, I was commissioned to. I do a thing called poems as landmarks, and what it is poems in public spaces. So on the sides of buildings, on sculptures, in the laid into the street, and what have you. And so I was commissioned to write. When somebody commissions you to write something, they commission you to write. They can't tell you what to write. You don't write to somebody's prescription. So it's like somebody giving you some money and saying, go write. Go find a poem. So I wrote the poem for the Olympics about the women from the matchmaking factory, which is based on the Olympic site. It was based on the Olympic site. And they were the first women to go on strike in British trade union history. And they were helped by a suffragette, not a suffragette, sorry. They were helped by a woman called Annie Besant, and I found this article that she wrote in 1888, and it said if only there was a poet to talk for these women, and that was like a calling. Yeah, that article was a calling. I was like, I must write the poem for the Olympic site about these striking women, and I did. And it's the most radical thing on the Olympic site. Really, it's got the word strike written all the way through it. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah.
It's going to be there for 100 years.
Yeah.
So, and how does that link with what I discussed about the writer and spirituality and physicality? Well, the matchmaking factory is there. And those women were there. They are part of TUC history, and it's a story that otherwise people would not know. So it's like making a connection with the past. And I don't have that. I don't believe that the past is. I think everything is present. So I think all of that story is present on the Olympic site. It's about making that connection.